Hi, I'm County Supervisor Jesse Armendarez. We are here with the Sheriff of San Bernardino County, Sheriff Dicus. Want to say hello?
Absolutely, Jesse. Thanks for being here. I know we're partnered in a lot of things that we have going on right now, and I'm anxious to talk about them and all the good things going on in our county.
Yeah, when I think about like getting this opportunity to actually sit down with you and do a podcast, I always think of how there's so many people who they know the sheriff, but they don't know the sheriff. And I've always said, and I say this to a lot of people, I go, when you know the sheriff's heart, you really can get behind everything he does, and it makes total sense. The passion you have when it comes to people and, our homeless and our drug addicted and some of the things that we've partnered on is because we have similar values and we share that. And that, I want to kind of take a moment to kind of just touch on that. And maybe if we can go a little bit back and what gave you that fire that you just are so compassionate with how people are treated and how you want to see these people in the community just thrive versus what we see today in society?
Well, really, to me, it's a global picture. Obviously, when you think of sheriff, you think of cops taking people to jail. But it is that jail piece that makes this a 360-degree viewpoint of what's going on in society. And what I mean by that is, how do we help people while they're incarcerated? It's a mandate for the sheriff to run those jails. So with that being said, what are we doing in there for rehabilitation? And then what do we see from a street view as it relates to what could the deputies be doing out there to get these people off the streets and get them into the help they need?
Yeah, and I've seen that, like, when I first came in the office and I had the pleasure of sitting down with you, and, you were so focused on saying, we have to help these people. We have to get them, remember the term is, people who are rotting in their own flesh or in their own skin. And you really put that perspective as how I've looked at it, where, we have all these people who I call them more like zombies, who are they're just there, surviving. How do we get those things in place that we can get them the help they need if they want the help, right? Because at the end of the day, it has to be a want. We can set up all the best, platforms, but if they're not going to take advantage of them, there's not much more we can do. But our hands are also being tied by the state, right? Where there's only so much we can do with them. So as we start building these systems like the navigation center in Fontana that we just signed an MOU for, how do you see things like that actually benefiting to help you do what you do in protecting our communities?
Well, excuse me, it's capacity building. So in that capacity building, Jesse, what you are providing at the end of the day is for us to place these people. And there are things that have happened since you and I have been talking. Proposition 36 is one of those, where now we get the courts involved. And what my dream would be is to see a system where we have somebody that's addicted. And in our county, there's usually that comorbidity with mental health issues. Getting those people before the court and having the court put them in these medical facilities, not jail, but it has to be a lockdown environment similar to what you and I would use with our insurance programs, where essentially they're saying, hey, you got a 90-day lockdown to dry out. People need that level of help. Right now, we only have facilities that are outpatient. Well, if you're not there and immersed in the treatment program, there's a high likelihood you're going to be doing narcotics if you're addicted at the same time. So having a navigation center that will point out some of these things and also give the court, for lack of a better way of explaining it to the public, a menu of services. Now the courts can sentence people to that rather than sentencing them to jail. Because it's just been my experience, particularly with mental health issues, that some people that have mental health issues actually degrade in jail because of the isolation and other things that are occurring in that environment.
Yeah, and I think I've seen that. We actually had the pleasure of doing a tour of the jail a while back to see how you guys are incorporating the mental health care at the actual jail. Like, so you're actually working with people while they're in jail and kind of trying to give them the help they need to get that mindset, I think, is how I would best describe it. What inspired you to actually go in that direction and say, we're going to give them the help while they're here too? Because I noticed when I was doing my tour of your jail, you're helping them there too while they're in with you.
Yeah, that's something traditionally sheriffs do. This is why I appreciate this opportunity coming from you, is sheriffs as a whole, people don't realize that we have a foot in both camps, the rehabilitation camp. And we have to have that. And I'm not just saying that we're mandated to do that. We have to have that. And then it's my goal that those people that want a second chance can actually turn around and do it. And what you and I and our partnership are providing is really that transition in capacity from incarceration. What have I done with them while they're in to treat a mental health issue, an addiction issue, and then you providing the capacity on the outside for that transfer. So it's that continuity of care that this county provides. What happens is a lot of time people will serve their sentence, get out of incarceration where they're in that environment, they're dried out and things are good, but go to what? Nothing except their old behavior. And so we're filling that gap, but we're doing it in a much more organized manner. So when you say navigation center, even the name is synonymous. We're taking them from one environment and navigating them directly into another environment and staying with them. And I think that's really important about the staying with them part and giving those resources, those continued resources, because, handing somebody a bag of pills related to their mental health problem, I've just seen from our experience and my deputies' experience, and I'll say kind of a selfish point, those deputies, they're going to respond to the same intersection where that person was acting up because that's where they know to go to. Let's break that cycle and do something different.
And I think we've seen that a lot in San Bernardino County, especially with your leadership and us trying to collaborate on making sure that we have all the tools we need to be able to assist you so that you can do your job effectively. Behavioral health. We're seeing huge changes right now in San Bernardino County with our behavioral health. As a sheriff, what more would you want to see from our side that we could be not just the partners we are today, but be better partners? And what kind of stuff are you looking forward to working with us on this side?
Jesse, what I like to see, and I call it cultural change, and the sheriff's department went through the same culture change with prison realignment. And we just saw things early on that really together we have to be united in providing resources and really, frankly, sharing resources. And this is kind of a weird concept when you really talk about it to the public, because law and justice partners exist to cooperate in terms of the system, but also be checks and balances for each other. So now when you bring public health and the Department of Behavioral Health in as a law and justice partner, that is this resource piece that you're talking about. So the cultural changes that have to occur to understand what cops see in the streets, that street view you and I talked about earlier, and getting that cultural change to be, we've got to be a 24/7 environment, which cops have always done. Having behavioral health now doing some of those cultural changes to be able to provide a family a phone number to call at 2 a.m. and not just having it rely on cops. You and I've talked in depth about a couple of, shootings we had of juveniles that were in crisis, and looking back, hey, what could have changed? And you see that the cops have taken them and put them into behavioral health resources, and only to find out, that they didn't get what they needed, or the time was delayed, or whatever else was going on. And then parents don't have a number to call a mental health professional that they can get a hold of for a different reactionary piece. This particular family had depended on the sheriff's department all along to do this. And unfortunately, it's just in the moment of crisis involving weapons that changes the whole dynamic.
So what I'm hearing is, at the end of the day, it's, if we're going to be those partners we need to have those 24-hour services like you do. And we need to make sure that our behavioral health, public health are ready to take that on and actually be that partner that when we're going to go through this, we're going to do it together, and we're going to make sure our resources are going to be available as long as yours are, because yours doesn't stop, right? Like you're a 24/7, 7 days a week business. We can't say, between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m., sorry, sheriff's closed down. We'll open back up at 5 a.m. You guys don't have that luxury. And I feel like that's where, if we're going to change our environment, we have to look at it the same way. From our hospitals can't close down, our firemen can't close down, our behavioral health is just as important. It's really partnering with you and figuring out how we do that and have the right message sent and have the right resources available so that we can be a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week organization when it comes to our public and behavioral health. And I know it's going to start smaller, but if we can create that model, I feel like we can show the state this is how you deal with not just your homeless, but you're dealing with your homeless, your substance abuse, you're mentally ill, and we're showing them how we can do that if we just bring the dollars in up front, and it'll save us dividends down the road, I think.
Yeah, I think it's a change in government. We're siloed. Department heads are siloed. We all have our specialties. And again, selfishly, we go out and protect the public. We arrest people. You can say that cops don't belong in the mental health environment, but when we're confronting these people in the streets, how do we have a better way to do that and better partnerships to fix those issues before they go into crisis, number one? but also have a system to include the courts. This, you mentioned it, government. How are we performing efficiently through the arrest, or not even the arrest, the referral, and maybe that goes to court. And there's other things too. When we go back to that statement about seeing people rot in their skin, Jesse, I'll be honest with you, from a completely human standpoint, the old way of arresting people and taking them to jail for their mental health issues and particularly for their drug addiction, that whole piece was more humane than what you and I are seeing now in the streets. Because until Prop 36 passed, we didn't have the ability to make those arrests anymore. So these folks would languish in the streets. And at the same time, I'm not advocating to put them in jail. That's not even close. But it really focuses on the capacity issue. With Prop 36 passing, now involving the courts, and you and I have talked a lot about what are the numbers in San Bernardino County. It's about 2,100 folks that have that comorbidity between addiction and mental health. And how do I know that? Our HOPE team does this. And we talk about cultural change. That was the culture change for us, was now having a team that's specifically contacting these people and trying to get them help the best we can, even with the limited resources that were out there.
And can we talk a little bit about that? Because I think that's one of those important things. Talk about the HOPE team, because I think there's a lot of people who don't realize that we have these resources out there and that this is something that you guys put into practice on your own. It wasn't something that was led any other than what you guys wanted to do.
Yeah, well, I mentioned a little bit, but right after prison realignment, we realized we were going to have these things. We started to see it with Prop 47 passing. And what the key thing for that was, a lot of people focus on the theft side, all the retail theft they were seeing. But there was the whole narcotics portion of this, where you took the serious drugs and moved them from a felony to a misdemeanor. So when you do that, it essentially makes it a citation. People aren't staying in jail, aren't going to court, aren't getting mandated treatment. This citation goes up, and on average, we were seeing about 6 to 7 failures to appear, more crimes being committed before that person was held to answer. So it was this revolving door. So what HOPE was doing is trying to go out there, do the interventions, connect to services, and really be that segue or bridge to the services, because at the time there was nothing else. And again, going back to we are a 24/7 entity, things are getting better in our county, though, and largely because, you've paid attention to a number of these things. You've realized that these gaps exist. And so some of the partnerships that we're making together are really affecting change in a positive way.
Yeah, and I think where mine came from, what a lot of people don't realize, is because I have family members who have substance abuse issues. I have family members who have mental health issues. And when I was trying to get their help before I was ever a county supervisor, seeing all those gaps, kind of opened my eyes to, we can do more, we should be doing more, but what did that look like? And until I got here, I wasn't able to sit there and really dive into it. And, talking with you and talking with other people, being able just to figure out how we bring those resources, that's how the pretty much how the Navigation Center came to be, I think, was how do we help more people? How do we get them in a place where we can hold them for a minute, where we're going to make sure they have all the resources they need if they choose. And I always say that because in my mind, it's a choice, whether you're, when they talk about our homeless who take 70 interventions before they decide if they want help, it is a choice, because at the end of the day, we can give them the tools, but if they don't want the tools, it doesn't really matter. We're just spinning our wheels. But what I try to tell people is, but more importantly, it allows you to do your job, because now there's no excuse for them. They can't sit here and say, oh, well, I don't have housing, or I don't have this, or I don't have that. Well, no, it's available to you if you want the help. And if you don't, then we're gonna enforce the laws. Transitioning to that, me and you, I know we're both big fans of River's Edge Ranch. Absolutely. Do you want to talk a little bit about it and tell what was inspiring to you about it?
Well, I'll tell you why. Yeah, exactly. I'll tell you why I'm a fan is, number one, their success rate is high. It's over 80% success rate. I've been in this business a long time. I'm going on my 35th year. To find that type of success rate is very nil. And I'm going to go back. I was on the Board of State and Community Corrections. And when we talk about Prop 47 and really understanding the complexity of all this, a lot of Prop 47 grants would go to these nonprofits. The problem with the analysis of that for me as a board member was this is self-reporting. So we would have them self-report what their status is and not have that, okay, prove it to me kind of auditing concept. With River's Edge Ranch, it's different. You can contact them. They're going to say who, why, where the person's at, and it's going back to that connection to you, frankly. while this is out in the rural area of Lucerne Valley, the ranch is, and it's got a little bit more of a heartfelt connection to me too, because of the cowboy aspect of this. And really, when I say cowboy aspect, I'm talking about a lifestyle and a work ethic and things that come along with that. And then more importantly, jobs come along with that. They're dealing with cattle out there. They learn how to take care of those animals. They're dealing, River's Edge is primarily funded by Water of Life Church. So they're actually being able to provide these products that we all need back to the congregation who funds them, and at the same time learn real skills that are employable.
Yeah, what took me was when I saw the whole program and heard about it, I actually had a friend who reached out to me who his son, over a football injury in college, got hooked on Oxy, and from Oxy went to heroin, went to fentanyl. Family found out. They were trying to find help for him. They reached out to me. I'm like, well, I know River's Edge, and called Doug Whiteman, who's at River's Edge, and I said, I got a friend. Do you guys have any room? He's like, we have to interview him. If he wants to help, we'll get him the help. And just seeing that transition when they interviewed him, he was at a place where he wanted to get right, and to see what they did with him, I was blown away. That was all I needed to see, because way too often I see nonprofits and other people, who go out there who claim to do good work, and like you said it better, there's no accountability. I love accountability for myself, for everyone around me. Like we have to be held accountable one way or another. And when we're giving money to whatever it is, we have to show that there's something tangible coming back from it. And that was my biggest frustration when I came in. I mean, honestly, as a county supervisor with a lot of nonprofits we are funding for homeless, I was like, where's the accountability? Where's the rubric that shows that they're making any headway? And so,
well, and I know you're a businessman, Jesse, but come on, that's really common sense for you to want that when you come in, right? And I'm in the same place. So I think we should throw more money at those that are actually making a big difference. But how do you know? So that auditing process, and not somebody telling us how good they are, but seeing how Shannon Dicus, for instance, 6 months after a program is still performing, still engaged in society, still employed, and going through the process and really standing them up. If we're being true to the county vision, basically that cradle to career, how else do you do that? And I think some of the things that you're investing in is 100% foundational to the county vision. And it's proof that we are all doing the right things and we're working together to be able to accomplish those things. And it's my job, while you are the purse that helps take care of these things, it's my job to be that informational point, to take street view. How do you put it in there and try to take some of the complexity out of this as it relates to the court systems? You and I have talked about conservatorships. Well, in certain circles, that's a bad word, right? You're thinking about locking people up. But a conservatorship can be something as simple as Shannon Dicus can't take care of his checkbook and his Social Security benefits that come in. But Jesse, you're my conservator, and you make sure that I don't just errantly spend my money. So now I keep the roof over my head. I pay my bills. That's a conservatorship. And involving the courts and identifying those people that are willing to help and putting the legal system behind this to keep that continuity of care is where we need to be.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Like I said, I share with people, I make it very public. I have family with mental health issues, and we're at a point in our life where we can't help anymore. Like he's gotten to that point where the conservatorship needs to take place. And so walking through that whole process and seeing how many hurdles there are to push us away from it, working with, whether you're working with behavioral health and all these other, I'm getting a firsthand of all the frustrations we've been talking about for the last couple of years. I'm getting a firsthand visual of what that is, because every time I'm trying to help somebody, I'm dealing with those issues. I'm like, okay, this is what Shannon must be going through. Well,
and it is. And we obviously go through it on a larger level, because not too long ago, I took some statistics, but about 16,000 of the calls that the deputy sheriffs go on are related to mental health, don't even have anything to necessarily do with a crime. So when you're looking at the amount of time they're spending on that, and when we do refer people, and don't get me wrong, Jesse, there are a lot of good programs. We actually have counselors embedded at each one of our stations now. They call it the TEST program. And those folks who have deputy, even on graveyard, goes to a call, and let's say it didn't take law enforcement interaction or taking that person into custody, like on a 5150 or something like that. you still refer the test counselor to that person, and then they start giving them services. So there are really good things going on. It's just understanding the whole system, how we can do better. For all of the supervisors, I know you guys want us to perform at our best efficiency we possibly can. And for me, it's really hard to explain the complicated dynamics going in. And I think that's why our relationship worked out so well, because you have practical experience. So I don't sound foreign to you when I'm coming in trying to explain what deputy sheriffs are experiencing.
Yeah, and for me, it's just been great to have my sheriff who's just as compassionate, who's just as wanting to make these changes that I came in wanting to make, to stand alongside me, because I didn't know what to expect when I got here and wanted to when I said I want to figure out a way to solve homelessness, when I said I wanted to figure out a way to deal with mental health or drug addiction, I didn't know who I would be, my adversary, or who would be my best friend. And to know that you're just as passionate has helped me tremendously when I'm out there and I'm trying to advocate, because I can always say, look, my sheriff supports us 110%. And I'll use little stories from tidbits of times where we spent together. You know, I use the phrase all the time, you know, people rotting in their own skin all the time. That's, if there's anything that stuck with me from any of our conversations, that was just so embedded, because it was such a real visualization of what we are seeing in society. And so I've loved partnering with you. I think one of the other things that I wanted to make sure we address, you know, to kind of digress from this, I feel like we can talk about this for 2 hours. Seat, you know, you have a program. We have the seat heat coming up right now. It's our sheriff's employees. Talk a little bit about that. Talk about what the benefits of that program are, because we're a huge supporter of that. From a second district point of view, we're a big supporter. But personally, I even donated this year. I actually donated from my personal bank account $1,000, because I felt this is going to such a great cause. But I want you to go just speak a little bit about that.
Yeah. So Jesse, I'll go back a little back into history, but I want to touch on something that you said that I don't think the public always realizes. And it is the sheriff, the elected position of the sheriff, is I am their voice. I'm their voice about how they see public safety, how they want public safety handled. And we have to abide by the law. Well, the sheriff has that broad view because of the jails and the people and the complex environments they have, and all these things, whether we're talking about seat, whether we're talking about the partnership with River's Edge, they all fold into one another if we're clicking on all cylinders and doing the right thing. And I know that there's a push to get rid of elected sheriffs. And I never want to see that happen, because I want our public to have a direct voice, so that the sheriff can talk to you like you and I are talking right now, and be able to relay that experience without politics being involved. This isn't a red or blue thing for me. It's the right thing. Going back to that statement about people rotting in their own skin. I mean, let's face it. We're all driving in certain areas and we see this, and it's almost become commonplace in California. So how does the human condition evolve to that when it should be something entirely different? So that's kind of near and dear to me. But going back to seat, I'll start with where it happened. It started with a friendly barbecue competition, and what we wanted to do is put a fund together. So heaven forbid if we had a crisis in our department with family members, and you know we've had line of duty deaths in the department, we needed a funding source. And we used to have the Sheriff's Council, and still do have the Sheriff's Council, and that is one volunteer group that does not answer to me as a sheriff, and that was purposeful, because they would do fundraising, and if we ever had a problem like that, I could call the council and they could provide that immediate funding. Maybe it's hotel rooms because we've had a tragedy or something like that. And that was great, and it worked well. But what we wanted to do was even take it into what you're talking about, is kind of the wellness levels. What are the other levels of that? So we started station against station barbecue across this entire county, started putting money into that fund, turned it into a 501c3, and then now we've put it in combined giving. So out of our paychecks, we're contributing to that. You as a supervisor are contributing to it. And we have a substantial amount of money there. And where we've seen that completely partnership and expand is the wellness of our deputy sheriffs. And as you can imagine, the things they see on a day-to-day basis, this affects you. You and I talked about the mental health related shooting of a child, a 15-year-old, right? Well, that particular deputy that was involved in that has the same age child. closing their eyes, and can you envision yourself, shooting your own child because you're presented with that situation? So there are a lot of wellness issues that we need to make sure we're very good at with our folks. We've got the Counseling Team International involved. We have an app so you can do these things anonymously and be able to contact them. But wellness for a cop is also full circle. What are we doing? And really, when I say cops, we could be any county employee, but we have different ways of investing, our 457 accounts, who's financial literacy, making sure they understand that, making sure going to the gym, staying healthy for your entire career, encompassing that. I mean, as you and I talk right now, I like to talk with my hands, but it reminded me that I'm even wearing an Oura ring right now. Wow. And some of these, bio indicators of your body, how you sleep in this case, but wellness, being more in tune with what's going on with you personally, so that when you are out there on the streets, you can be the best deputy you can possibly be, because again, we're taking care of those things that hadn't traditionally been taken care of. And we've always tried, but I think we are really doing a good job. And with your support, we're going to continue to do that. And I couldn't be more proud. And it plays out practically in some of the things you've been directly involved in. In your district, we had Andrew Nunez get shot in the line of duty. And so how do you support Andrew's family? And while money does not fix everything, to be able to go in and take care of the immediate needs for the family so they can focus on the grief and loss that they experienced, you and I can never fix that. And you know that, I know that, but can we at least be present in the moment and provide those resources that will soften the blow somewhat? And then as we move forward, stay together with that family, support them, and make sure they're whole.
Yeah, and Andrew knew, it was like, it was really real for me, because I actually, he served, he was one of our detail for us. We had an event here. We had a delegation come out, and we were doing a tour of San Bernardino County, and we were in Rancho having a dinner for that delegation, and Andrew was one of the guys assigned. And, I don't know what it is about meeting somebody, talking to somebody, and then to hear their lives taken, especially the way the life was taken. I don't know if it hit harder to me because I met him, and so I visualized him. The laughter, that half hour I spent with the guy, which in most life, we spend a lot of half hours with a lot of people. That impacted me to the point where I was able to see just a small piece of what, unfortunately, you have to go through more times than you ever want to speak of, I'm sure. And having something like this, like see, there for those after, for not just for your officers to give them what they need, but for the families. I mean, I would encourage everyone to, if they haven't been there and been at that barbecue, to go and to support this, because it is such a great, noble cause that is only benefiting those who protect us. So I wanted to make sure we touched on that. I know you're also helping with some state legislation. Do you want to talk a little bit about that with the CCWs?
There's so many things going on as it relates to legislation, and kind of going back to the partnership with the board. It would seem like, okay, maybe the sheriff's going a certain way on legislation and the board's going another way, because you get advised by so many different people. One of the things I really love about what we've all done together is we have a little bit more of a united legislative front. And mental health is what really brought this together, frankly, is that we were taking two different directions. And why is that? So I'm very happy about that. And I got to tell you, Jesse, being the sheriff and getting involved in that legislation, I tried to stay in my lane, public safety, right, is something that I didn't realize is so important to the support of the men and women that are out there doing the hard job, because these things affect them. You and I have already talked about one. Going from Prop 47 to Prop 36, that gave a deputy sheriff tools to evaluate a person. When you're under the influence of drugs, physiologically, you can't hide that. Yeah. So that when you recognize that and you're trained to do it, you establish reasonable suspicion in a contact fairly quickly. And then as you do that and you rely on your training and experience, you move into probable cause after field sobriety tests and things of that nature. And then what happens is that what I'm describing to you is what I believe in this county, and certainly something I promote, is proactive policing, getting to the criminal element before they get to the public. And so when that happens and you do that and you realize the person's under the influence of methamphetamine, let's say, and the deputy goes through all those steps and ultimately makes an arrest, that's how you find the gun underneath the seat of the car or the baggie of dope inside the car. These are tools we didn't have until Prop 36 came back. So us advocating for things and understanding Street View and how that works makes all the sense in the world to affect positively the human condition. So there's a few legislative bills right now that are very complicated. You know, we talk about immigration. You mentioned CCW. What people don't understand about immigration, you're talking about federal law enforcement authorities who have the right and are actually assigned to do some of the things that you're seeing in terms of contacting those people. Highly controversial, right? Well, now we're talking about passing laws in California when we talk about masking or these folks can't go to court. Who's going to enforce that? I'm in charge of the courts. And it's not enforceable because a deputy sheriff would be intervening or obstructing federal justice. And we have the same laws in California. If I were investigating a case and you came up and, hey, get out of there and do this and everything, and you're interfering with that, you would be arrested. I can't have my people obstruct justice and potentially be arrested. So it's a very complicated constitutional issue that's being talked about as a political talking point, not actually how it affects the boots on the ground. CCWs, you know, I think it's incumbent upon me as the sheriff to make sure that if a person wants a CCW, that they're able to get it. And yes, I'm a Second Amendment supporter, but it goes deeper than that for me. It goes deeper to if you feel the need to protect your family and you go through the proper training and that's one way in which you want to do it, you should be able to do that. Number one, I am so blessed to have the best protective force in the United States that will go out there and on your worst day, they're going to give everything they got, every ounce of how fast that patrol car can get to you in an emergency situation. But we are in the largest county in the United States. And while maybe here in Rancho Cucamonga, we might be able to respond a little bit faster, think about Barstow that covers 5,000 square miles. It's the only place I've ever been in at 140 miles an hour of everything a Crown Victoria would give me, and I'm still 20 minutes away from the fight. So if the person that's in the fight, their life gets threatened by a criminal and they have the ability to protect themselves, why wouldn't I let them? And I promote that. Yeah. And we have good training. We have good, solid training. And so recently in partnering with James Ramos, we fortunately were able, at his leadership, extend the CCW process because, you know, you go through a lot of training to do that. To only go through the process, turn around and have to do it again. It's very time consuming. Everybody, you know, businesses, families, everything that's going on. So him noticing that and getting that extended, I'm very appreciative of that because I want to supply that service to the public should they want it.
And I thank you for it because that is a long process. People who have to go through that, you know, they're in class for 8 hours. First time it's like 16 hours, I think. Is that what the law changed to? Like they had to be in there.
Yes. You're basically doing twice the educational classroom work. And
you know, for me personally, if it was me and I was dealing with that, I would want that 8-hour training. But more importantly, I'd rather see a regularly use of my gun, making sure that you know how to properly use that gun. For me, it's like, you know, it needs to become muscle memory for like how you guys train.
Well, and it's funny, I talk about that in the classes. I try to visit the majority of the classes that go through because for two reasons. Number one, hearing from our citizen base as they go through there and kind of what they believe the problems are in society and is going on helps me really move forward in our long-term plans about, you know, what we need to tackle and those type of things. I see statistics and all of those other things, but actually hearing from the citizens you serve is important to me. But we talk about that muscle memory that you're talking about. I talk about that. So one of the things that I allow people to have 3 guns on their CCW permits, and there's some people that want more than that. But what you just described about, you know, your worst day, and you have to go to that, I want it to be muscle memory so they can protect themselves and their family and they aren't thinking twice about it.
Yeah, that would be like, I don't know if you know, so I'm a huge Second Amendment guy myself, but I also am huge on training. I've partnered with gun safety organizations to actually go out into the 2nd District and promote gun safety for those who are afraid of guns, for those who have never touched a gun, for someone who's thinking about owning a gun, to someone who wants to get their CCW. Like, I want everyone to understand the value of protecting yourself, but also if you're going to protect yourself, know what the rules are.
Sure. Do it and do it right. Weapons storage, all those things that are important.
So, you know, I thank you for, taking the time here. Is there anything else you want to touch base on while you have me here? Anything you want to put me on the hot seat on or anything?
Not really the hot seat, Jesse, but another partnership thing that I think is coming, and a lot of this has to do with things that you see your street view. And so one thing in this state, we recently had, and it was something that you guys had to deal with as the Board of Supervisors, but we had one of our deputy sheriffs who was involved in an officer-involved shooting where a person was trying to hit him with a vehicle in a very narrow driveway. Well, with that being said, we do the criminal case, he gets convicted for trying to kill the deputy. And then on the civil side, we spend millions of dollars to a person that's doing a 13-year prison sentence. I think we've lost our way in terms of the torts that are going on and how that are going. And what I worry about for you and I and for all of the citizens we serve is the money. This is emotional and passion decision. It's an insurance company can probably figure out the value of my life and how that moves forward and what is the value of that. We need tort reform. We've got to have some civil reforms to make sure we're not going to go bankrupt as a county. And don't get me wrong, we've done things wrong. When government does something wrong, you should certainly try to make a person whole.
There's an accountability factor that I don't ever want to dismiss, but you and I are lock, stock, and barrel on this. I'm actually going to be headed to San Diego after this, where I'm going to be with CSAC. And I don't know if your people, I asked for talking notes on this because we just had this discussion yesterday where we need to have real conversations on this because, in my opinion, this is a gift of public funds. The hundreds of millions of dollars that we spend protecting ourselves, settling lawsuits, we could end homelessness. And this is the way I try to put it in perspective. I'm paying $20-some million on a lawsuit that the jury felt that was adequate on somebody's life. What was that life worth? And I'm not saying worth, but you understand what I'm saying. Financially, what was that? What did that look like? Like you said, there's insurance companies who could probably figure out what that value is. I mean, we have disability insurance, right? You lose a limb, there's a value associated with that limb. Maybe whatever that is, but we're constantly being pushed, and these verdicts are getting bigger and bigger and bigger to the point where it could bankrupt a county. Or it could also take tons of resources that could have went somewhere else. I would be, I even had said this one, I would even be more advantageous to say, okay, well, you say 27 million, that's fine. We're going to find out what that life's worth and whatever that number is, 2-3 million, whatever. Take the rest of that money and have to reinvest it in stopping something like that from happening again. Helping families, helping with drug addiction, helping with homelessness. If the person was homeless, okay, we're gonna put $20 million towards homelessness. I'd rather put it there and say we're helping people than to say that we're going to give $27 million and someone hit the lotto.
Well, when you see the differences between a criminal case where the person's convicted for trying to kill a deputy sheriff, and then on the flip side in the civil case, we spend that level of money, it absolutely makes no sense to me. And I think if the public were to be aware of the things that you and I have to deal with in terms of business decisions and other things that are made in the amount it's costing the taxpayer, they would be sickened, and there's a better way to do this. So as far as what you're doing with CSAC, which is the lobbyist organization for counties, just so you know, the chiefs of police and I just came back from Sacramento, talked to our legislators. The legislators are on board. And really right now, if you want to say the petri dish or the science of what's going on, look at LA County. They just had a $4 billion settlement on things. And when you have settlements that size, I mean, you're going to bankrupt government. There won't be services. Mm-hmm. And this is something that is of critical importance. I think we all need to be paying attention to. So going back to us being lockstep in terms of trying to deal with these things and still provide that accountability piece that you spoke to, that, hey, when we make mistakes, we need to make it right as best we can.
Yeah, and I'll be out there advocating for this tort reform today. So hopefully I can come back with some decent news, or, hey, we're working in that direction, but it's good to know that the sheriff's organizations are on board, and you guys were up there already, and it sounds like some of our legislators are on board with taking a look at this.
They are. So many things you and I touched on, Prop 36, the legislators, they want to fund that. And I do believe there's a bit of a wind of change coming in. It seems to be that, I'll say more moderates, their voices seem to be getting louder. And I think as a public, that's what we want. We want those varying opinions. We want that good, solid debate to go through so that we land on the best things for the people we represent back in our districts, not
Yeah.
for the political party.
Yeah. No, thank you for coming. I appreciate everything you're doing. Keep up the good work. I look forward to more partnerships with you, and let's continue to make this county the best county we can.
No, Jesse, I appreciate it. Thank you for, number one, you taking the time to understand complex issues, because that's difficult. It really is, to be able to take that time to be able to do that. And just please know, however, you and any of the other board members use me. I've got 35 years worth of experience, and I've been fortunate enough to raise my kids in this county. And I certainly want to give back. I could have retired a while ago, but I'm not doing it because I see the men and women that are working our streets and protecting us right now. They're exceptional people. And I hope I can use my experience to protect them when politics seem to get in the way or try to judge them. And that's going to be my main focus as you and I continue our partnership.
That's what I've always loved about you. I always tell people, I go, and I'm sure you'll appreciate this. I'm like, he's a cop's cop. He cares about his guys. He cares about his rank and file. You're not the polished politician who's trying to be the sheriff. You are a sheriff who is leading your sheriffs. So I love what you're doing. Can't wait to see what comes next.
Well, thank you for your time, Jesse, as always, and thank you for doing what you do.
Oh, thank you. All right.